She called him the problem in the back row before she ever learned his name. Now it's 3 a.m. in a cold hospital hallway, his rough fingers locked around hers as his sister fights for her life. What happens when the white lecturer who judged him is the only person who shows up when his whole world starts to fall apart? Before we dive in, make sure to hit subscribe, tap like and share this video. The more voices we reach, the louder these stories become. And drop your city in the comments. Let's see where love finds us. Dr. Helena Ward's heels struck the hallway in sharp, steady beats, each click rebounding off the concrete walls. She held her coffee in one hand, her laptop bag in the other, and her jaw clenched just enough to hurt. First week of the semester. Senior ethics seminar. 50 students and statistically, at least 3 headaches. Her reflection flashed in the narrow window beside the classroom door. Long blonde hair twisted into a high, no-nonsense bun, pale skin, glasses balanced halfway down her nose. The fitted emerald dress hugged every soft curve of her body, flaring slightly over her hips. She tugged the blazer closed out of habit, as if she could make herself less thick, less noticeable, less of what men had spent years ogling and then criticizing once she didn't bend the way they wanted. Whatever. She was here to teach, not to be liked. She pushed the door open. The room buzzed with early morning chatter. Desks crammed together, backpacks on the floor, blue light from laptop screens painting tired faces. A few students straightened immediately at her entrance. Others kept talking, assuming she wouldn't call them out this early. Phones away, Helena said without raising her voice. She didn't need to. If I see a screen that isn't taking notes, I'll assume you're not here to learn and grade accordingly. The buzz dropped off. Chairs scraped as people shifted, shuffled, scrambled. It was the same every semester. They learned fast. She crossed to the podium and set her coffee down, eyes sweeping the room, a familiar inventory. The front row, overachievers and anxious scholarship students. The middle, the negotiators, half in, half out, seeing how much they could get away with. The back, her gaze snagged. Near the last row, a tall black man sat sprawled in his seat like he was in his own living room. Grey hoodie, sleeves pushed up over strong forearms, jeans faded at the knees. Close-cropped hair jaw dusted with stubble, one earbud in. Phone in his hand, thumbs flying. He didn't even pretend to hide it. Of course. "Sir," Helena called out, projecting her voice down the rows. "Last seat, grey hoodie. This is a classroom, not a bus stop. Put the phone away." His eyes lifted to hers, and for a moment she forgot what she was about to say next. They were warm brown, but not soft, dark with lack of sleep, ringed with a tiredness that felt too old for a college student. There was something wary in them, like he'd been braced for impact long before she walked in. He pulled one earbud out slowly. "It's my sister," he said, voice low, roughened by either early mornings or late nights. "And I'm your lecturer," Helena cut in, pulse ticking faster. She could already hear the excuses. They never changed. "You had the entire hallway before class to handle that. You're here now. Be present or leave." His jaw tightened. He didn't move. Silence fell over the rows closest to him. Students watched like it was a tennis match, ball meet net. He held her gaze, and for a second Helena felt challenged. Not the usual lazy defiance she saw when someone thought they could charm their way out of consequences, but something sharper, like he was weighing whether this fight was worth it. Then finally he locked his phone and slid it into his pocket. "Happy?" he muttered, barely audible. "No," Helena said coolly, "but it's a start." There was a ripple of quiet snickers in the front row. She ignored them. She went back to the podium, woke the projector and pulled up the syllabus. "My name is Dr. Helena Ward," she began. "This is Ethics and Social Responsibility in Contemporary Policy. If you're here because you think this will be an easy A, drop the class now. I don't have time to drag anyone behind me." She took them through the basics: readings, expectations, written reflections, the semester-long project. As she spoke, she felt her composure settle around her like armor. She knew this role. She was good at it. When she looked up again, half the laptops were open on the document she'd asked them to create. "What is justice to you?" A few students were still staring at the screen as if the question itself was offensive. Her gaze landed at the back again. Grey hoodie, she glanced at the roster projected on her tablet and matched face to name. Malik Jordan. He wasn't typing. His laptop was closed. His hands were on the desk, fingers laced so tight the knuckles whitened. He wasn't looking at her either. He stared at a spot just past her shoulder, jaw working silently. "Mr. Jordan," she said. He startled slightly, eyes snapping to hers. "You planning to join us at any point, or are you just here to enjoy the scenery?" A few people snorted. His gaze flicked down her body. Just a second, a quick sweep over her curves in the fitted dress, the cinched waist, the V of her neckline. Not leering, not lingering, but noticing. A flush rose up her neck anyway. He exhaled slowly, a hint of frustration in the sound, and opened his laptop. "Yeah," he said. "I'm here." "For what?" she pressed. She didn't know why she couldn't leave it alone. Maybe because he looked like the kind of student who disappeared halfway through the semester and then expected her to care about their situation. He met her eyes again. "To pass," he said, deadpan. "Same as everybody." A few chuckles floated through the room. Helena held his gaze a beat longer, then nodded and moved on. "You have 10 minutes, she told the class. "Define justice in your own words. No quotes, no Google. Just you and whatever you actually believe." She tried to focus on her notes, but irritation pricked beneath her skin like static. She'd seen this pattern for years. Students who started out resistant, defensive, distracted. Students who thought she had it out for them because she expected them to show up on time and put their phones away. They called her cold behind her back. She'd overheard it more than once. Ice Queen, the B word in nicer wrapping. They never saw the nights she lay awake worrying about the ones who disappeared. The emails she wrote to advisors, the quiet calls she made to counselors, the way she noticed when someone's clothes got shabbier, or they stopped washing their hair, or they suddenly sat alone. She noticed Malik, too. He wrote for a few minutes, shoulders curled in, then stopped and pressed his thumb hard into the bridge of his nose. His phone vibrated in his pocket. She saw the faint movement. His fingers twitched. He didn't reach for it. When the 10 minutes were up, Helena tapped the podium. "Who's brave?" A girl in the front row, light brown skin, neat braids, glasses, raised her hand. "Justice is when consequences match what actually happened, not what people assume happened," she read. "When people in power don't get to make up their own facts." Helena nodded, something in those words landing a little too close to home. "Good. Thank you, Amara." Several students volunteered. Their answers were messy, earnest, incomplete. That was the point. You didn't sign up for ethics because you had all the answers. You signed up because you were finally ready to ask the right questions. "Mr. Jordan," she said eventually, like she hadn't already decided she wasn't going to call on him. He looked up slowly. "Pass." "That's not an option," Helena replied. "The assignment was 10 minutes of honest thought. You had 10 minutes. Share it." The room held its breath. Even the clock on the wall seemed to tick louder. He stared at her for a long beat, then cracked his laptop open further and glanced down at what he'd typed. His lips pressed into a thin line. "Justice," he read, voice steady but quiet, "is when people stop treating you like a problem they have to manage and start treating you like a person they might not understand yet." The words hit harder than she expected. He swallowed and continued. "It's not just about punishment. It's about somebody actually asking why. Why you're late, why you're tired, why you took your phone out, why you messed up. And if they don't ask, they don't get to say they care." A silence settled over the room, heavier than before. A few students shifted, exchanging glances. Helena's throat felt tight in a way she didn't like. "Thank you," she said, because it was the only neutral response she trusted herself with. "That's a useful framework." Useful framework. God, she sounded like a policy document. His gaze flicked up, something bitter and amused moving through his eyes for half a second. Then he shut his laptop with more force than necessary. The rest of class blurred. She moved through slides, facilitated a short debate, assigned the first reading. The hour passed in a rush of words and theory. When she finally dismissed them, the room erupted into motion. Students poured out, chattering, chairs scraping, backpacks zipping. Malik moved slower, shoving his laptop into a battered backpack, fingers clumsy with hurry. As he slung the strap over his shoulder, his phone buzzed again. This time he snatched it out immediately, scanning the screen. His face drained of colour. He didn't look at Helena as he pushed past the last row, practically shouldering the door open. It slammed behind him, the sound echoing down the hallway. Helena stared after him. a knot forming in her chest. She told herself it was because she disliked disruption. She told herself it was because he'd already broken 3 of her rules in one class. But as she sipped her now cold coffee and opened her email, the truth gnawed at the edges of her certainty. For the first time in a long time, she'd looked at a student, made a snap judgment, and his words had made her wonder if she'd just proven him exactly right. The email came in at 2:17 a.m. Helena saw it the next morning, bleary-eyed over her first coffee, her robe clinging to her curves as she sat at the kitchen counter. She'd fallen asleep grading, red pen still uncapped. The glow of her laptop threw soft light over the quiet apartment. Subject ethics seminar Malik Jordan. She clicked it open, expecting a complaint. Instead, it was 3 lines. Open quote. Dr. Ward, I know participation is a big part of your class, is that I might miss tomorrow. My sister's in the ER again. I'll try to make it. M. Close quote. Again. The single word snagged her. She read it twice. There was no long explanation, no manipulation, no demand to be excused. Just that. She closed the laptop slowly and sat very still. He'd written that after the class yesterday, after she'd called him out, after he'd read that definition of justice like it was something ripped straight out of his own skin. Her coffee went cold before she finally moved. By the time she walked into the classroom, blazer pulled tight over her fitted dress, she had convinced herself of one thing. He'd probably skip. It would be easier. No confrontation, no complicated twinges of guilt she didn't know what to do with. But when she turned from the podium to face the room, there he was. Back row. Same seat. Hoodie zipped halfway up over a plain black t-shirt. He looked like he hadn't slept at all. Dark smudges framed his eyes. His broad shoulders were slumped, but his gaze was alert, wary. Their eyes met for half a second. He quickly looked away. Morning, Helena said to the class. Her voice sounded too bright in her own ears. Today we're talking about power. Who gets to define what's right when they're the ones holding all the cards? A few students smirked. Someone whispered, like professors? Under their breath. She ignored it. As the discussion got rolling, she noticed Malik stayed quiet. No phone, no earbud. His laptop was open, cursor blinking in a blank document. He stared at it like words hurt. Let's talk scenarios, Helena said, pulling herself back to the task. Imagine a student who comes in late, looks distracted, breaks rules. The lecturer assumes they don't care. She writes them off. Her tongue tripped over the pronoun, but she kept going. Now imagine that student is dealing with something you can't see. A sick family member, 2 jobs, no support. Who holds the power in that interaction? Who gets to decide what story is true? Hands shot up. The professor does, one girl said. She controls the grade, the narrative. Even if she's wrong, it doesn't matter unless the student pushes back. And if he pushes back? Helena asked. What happens then? People call him difficult, a guy in the middle row answered, or aggressive, especially if he's black. Helena's chest tightened. The room felt smaller, air thickening around her. Her gaze drifted, uninvited, to the back row. Malik was staring straight at her, eyes steady, unreadable. He didn't look away this time. Exactly, Helena said quietly. So when we talk about ethics, we're not just talking about abstract rules. We're talking about how quickly we decide who someone is and how rarely we ask if we might be wrong. The words tasted bitter and newly honest on her tongue. After class, students clustered around her with routine questions about readings and deadlines. By the time she packed up her things, the room was almost empty. Almost. She felt him before she saw him, that heavy, restless presence hovering near the door. She glanced up. Malik stood there, gripping the strap of his backpack, thumb rubbing raw circles into the canvas. "Do you have a second?" he asked gruffly. She nodded and gestured toward the front row. Her heart thudded harder than it should as she watched him cross the room. Up close, he looked even more exhausted, like the night had sat on his shoulders and refused to move. He stayed standing, as if ready to bolt. "I got your email," she said carefully, "about your sister." His mouth pressed into a hard line. "Yeah, she's fine now, I think." He shrugged one shoulder. "The ER says stable, like that means something." There was an ache under the sarcasm that tugged at her. "Is she okay to be alone while you're here?" Helena asked, then winced inwardly. It sounded like a test, not concern. He let out a humorless laugh. "She's not alone. My cousin's with her. I came because missing class means losing points. and I can't fail this. So, he spread his hands briefly, broad palms scarred with small white lines. Here I am. Something in her loosened and then tightened again all at once. You didn't have to come, she said softly. An ER visit is... Yeah, I did. His voice sharpened. People hear ER and black, and suddenly they assume you're looking for a handout or drugs. I have to show I'm not slacking everywhere else, or it all gets lumped in the same box. His gaze flicked over her again. Her curves, the fitted dress, the neat bun, the glasses. The whole image she'd carefully built to be taken seriously. I know how people see me, he added, quieter now. Hoodie, late, phone, attitude. I'm used to being the problem in the back row. The words from his reflection yesterday echoed between them. Justice is when people stop treating you like a problem. Helena swallowed. Her throat felt dry. You're not the problem to me, she said too quickly. His eyebrow twitched. Really? Because yesterday you didn't even let me finish a sentence before you shut me down. Heat crawled up her neck. I enforce the same rules for everyone, she said, defensive even as she heard the thinness of it. He held her gaze. Yeah, he said. But you don't see everyone the same. No one does. Silence stretched between them, taut and fragile. Helena exhaled slowly, the breath moving through her chest like surrender. You're right, she admitted. The words felt strange and heavy and freeing all at once. I saw the hoodie, the phone. I assumed you weren't taking this seriously. I am, he said immediately, jaw tightening. This class is my last requirement. I'm finishing this degree even if it kills me. There was something fierce in his voice, a desperate edge that cut through her defenses. Then help me understand, she said, surprising herself. You emailed me at 2 a.m. from the ER. You still showed up on time. You haven't checked your phone once this entire class. Why? For the first time his expression flickered with something rawer than annoyance. Because she's my sister, he said simply, and I'm all she's got. And if I don't finish this degree, I keep bouncing between crap jobs that don't pay enough to cover her meds. So I work nights at the warehouse, mornings at the campus cafe, and I go to class in between. It's not complicated. It just never stops. He looked away, jaw flexing, and for a moment Helena saw it. The early mornings, the ache in his shoulders, the constant worry gnawing at him. The weight of being someone's lifeline when you were barely keeping your own head above water. Her chest ached in a new, unfamiliar way. Malik, she said quietly, and saying his name felt like crossing a line she hadn't realized she'd drawn. I'm sorry for the way I handled things yesterday. His eyes snapped back to hers, wary. You don't have to apologize. I know. She straightened, her curves shifting under the fitted fabric, suddenly aware of how small the space between them had become. But I judged you, fast, hard. I talk about ethics and justice every day, and I still did it. That's not the kind of lecturer I want to be. Something in his posture softened, just slightly. Okay, he said after a moment. Thank you. They stood there, two people with more in common than either wanted to admit. Both tired, both carrying more than they showed, both hiding behind armor, his hoodies and sarcasm, her sharp tongue and perfectly controlled appearance. You're allowed to advocate for yourself, she added more gently, especially when it comes to your sister. Next time, you don't have to wait until 2 a.m. to tell me what's going on. He barked out a short laugh. You say that now. Most professors hear family stuff and their eyes glaze over. I'm not most professors, she said before she could stop herself. His gaze swept over her again, this time slower, almost curious. She felt it like a touch on bare skin, her curves suddenly too present, too real. No, he said finally, a small huff of breath that almost counted as a smile. Yeah, I'm starting to see that. Something fluttered in her stomach, unwelcome and electric. She stepped back, needing space. Look, academically speaking, if you're working nights and dealing with medical emergencies, you're going to need structure. Come to my office hours this week. We'll map out a plan. I don't want to lose you halfway through the semester because you're drowning. He hesitated. You really have time for that? For a student who's fighting this hard? She managed a small, genuine smile. I'll make time. He looked at her for a long second, and in his eyes she saw something new. Not just frustration, not just wariness, but a flicker of trust so fragile it made her want to hold it with both hands. Okay, he murmured. I'll stop by. As he turned to leave, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, shoulders tensing, then exhaled. "It's her," he said, half to himself. "She hates hospitals." "Tell her," Helena said, heart pounding for no rational reason, "that somebody in this building is rooting for both of you." He glanced back, that almost smile returning, warmer this time. "I'll tell her," he said, "though she's probably going to think you're terrifying." Helena laughed, the sound surprising her. "That's fair. She'd be right." He shook his head as he pushed the door open. "Nah," he said over his shoulder, "I think you just don't know how soft you actually are yet." The door swung shut behind him, the echo lingering long after he was gone. Helena stood alone in the empty classroom, her hand pressed lightly over the sudden, painful fullness in her chest. Soft. No one had called her that in years without meaning weak. But somehow the way he'd said it, it didn't feel like an insult at all. It felt like a truth she'd been afraid to touch. By October, the light in Helena's classroom changed. The harsh white glare of the first week's mornings softened to a muted gold that slid over desks and laptops, catching dust motes in mid-air. Students came in already talking about readings instead of complaining about them. They challenged her more, argued back, pushed each other. She knew exactly when that shift started. It began the day Malik first walked into her office hours. He arrived 10 minutes late, breathing hard, hoodie damp with sweat as if he'd run across campus. Her tiny office suddenly felt smaller with him in it, broad shoulders nearly brushing both walls, his presence making the cramped space feel crowded in a way that was strangely alive. "Sorry," he said, leaning in the doorway, one hand braced above his head. "My shift ran over. Guy scheduled me for unload and register." He rolled his eyes. Apparently time is fake. Helena looked up from the stack of essays she'd been grading. Her fitted navy dress hugged her curves as she shifted in the chair, crossing one leg over the other. "You're here," she said, more gently than she expected. "That's what counts." He stepped inside, easing himself into the chair opposite her desk. It creaked in protest. "So," she tapped her pen against his name on the roster, "you said you wanted a plan. Let's make one." They talked schedules, work shifts, his sister's dialysis appointments, the gaps where he could realistically read and write, the places where she'd been assigning too much. "Wait," he said at one point, frowning. "You expect 10-page reflection papers on top of the group project and weekly responses?" "I did," she admitted, "but I'm reconsidering." His eyebrows shot up. "Because of me?" "Because of reality," she countered. "You're not the only one working 2 jobs. I talk about ethical labor conditions and then assign work like I have no idea what your lives look like. That's hypocritical." He huffed a quiet, surprised laugh. "Damn. Most professors would rather chew glass than say that out loud." "Don't make a big deal out of it," she muttered, feeling heat creep up her chest. "I'm just adjusting the course to align with my supposed values." But truthfully, it was more than that. Sitting across from him, watching the way he balanced his weight on both feet like he might need to bolt it at any second, Helena felt something loosening inside her. He wasn't just a student in a hoodie anymore. He was a person whose days bled into nights without a break, whose phone might ring at any second with a new emergency, whose entire life pivoted around his sister's heartbeat. "You talk about justice like it's personal," she said once, curiosity slipping past her usual restraint. "Not many undergrads do." "That's 'cause it is," he replied simply. "I don't have the luxury of it being theoretical." He told her small pieces in fragments over the weeks, not as a performance, not as an excuse, just because she listened. His sister, Lila, had been diagnosed with kidney failure at 19. Their mother had left years before. Their father showed up on holidays with loud apologies and louder excuses, then vanished again. Malik dropped out once already to keep them afloat, then clawed his way back when a financial aid counselor took a chance on him. Helena realized, slowly and with a startled kind of grief, just how many Maliks she'd had in her classroom before. How many she'd never asked. Some evenings, when her back ached and her fitted dresses felt like armor she was too tired to wear, she would catch him glancing at her. At the soft curve of her stomach as she reached for the whiteboard, the generous lines of her hips as she maneuvered between desks. It wasn't the calculating stare she'd learned to flinch away from in staff meetings and faculty parties. There was no entitlement in it, no measuring or mocking. It was noticing. witnessing, seeing. The first time their hands brushed, it was an accident. He was passing her a stack of peer evaluations after class. She reached at the same moment. His fingers were rough and warm. Her whole body sparked like she'd grabbed a live wire. "Sorry," he said quickly, pulling back as if he'd burned her. "It's fine," she replied, too brisk. Her skin tingled long after he'd left. She did not think about it that night as she lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the shape of his hand replaying in her memory. She absolutely did not think about the way his gaze softened when she laughed at one of his dry, sideways comments. She refused to think about any of it. He was her student. Whatever was unfolding between them, it had to stay inside the thin, complicated line of care and boundaries. Then in November, the call came. She was at home, barefoot in leggings and an oversized sweater that spilled over one curvy shoulder, grading late papers at the kitchen table. Her phone lit up with an unknown number. "Hello?" There was a pause, then Malik's voice strained and thin around the edges. "Dr. Ward? It's me. Sorry, I know it's late." Her heart dropped clean through her ribs. "What's wrong?" "It's Lila." A breath, shuddering. "They moved her to ICU. I'm at the hospital. I'm going to miss the presentation tomorrow, and that's like, 30%? I didn't want you to think I bailed." Helena stared at the stack of rubrics on the table, the carefully balanced grading system she'd designed to stave off complaints. Suddenly it all seemed absurdly fragile. "Forget the presentation." She said immediately, "We'll figure that out later. Are you okay?" He let out a shaky laugh that sounded nothing like humor. I'm here." Something in her cracked at the word. "What hospital?" she asked. There was a beat of stunned silence. "Why?" "Because I'm coming," she heard herself say. "Dr. Ward, you don't have to." "I know." She was already grabbing her coat, shoving her feet into boots. Her curves strained against the tight zip, but she yanked it up anyway. "Text me the address." His protest faded into a disbelieving, choked sound. "Okay," he whispered. "Okay." The hospital air smelled like antiseptic and old fear. Helena found him slumped in a plastic chair outside a glass-walled ICU room, elbows on his knees, hands laced behind his neck. He looked up as she approached, eyes swollen and red. For the first time since she'd known him, his posture didn't hold any defiance, just exhaustion and raw, naked terror. "You came," he said, as if he still didn't quite believe it. "Of course I came," she said softly. She sank into the chair beside him, the thin plastic biting into her thighs. Lila lay motionless behind the glass, a tangle of tubes and wires. She was small and dark-haired, face pale against the white pillow. Helena's chest clenched. This was the again from his email, the endless loop of crisis and fragile recovery. "They say her levels are bad," he murmured, staring straight ahead. "They use all these words, but all I hear is 'we don't know.' I'm so damn tired of 'we don't know.'" He swallowed hard. His voice dropped. "I keep thinking if I just work harder, study smarter, be better, I can fix it, like there's some right answer I haven't found yet. But I can't fix this. I can't do anything." Without thinking, Helena reached over and wrapped her hand around his. His fingers went still. He didn't pull away. "You're here," she said quietly, her thumb brushing the scars on his knuckles. "You show up, you fight for her, that matters." He turned his hands slowly, so their fingers interlaced. The contact was simple, human, devastating. "You don't have to stay," he said after a while, voice hoarse. "You probably have better things to do on a Friday night than watch machines beep with your student." "I don't," she said honestly, "and even if I did, this matters more." He looked at her then, really looked at her, messy hair escaping her bun, curves softened by the oversized sweater, eyes rimmed with tired smudges. She felt unexpectedly bare, stripped of all the things she usually hid behind. "You're different than I thought," he said softly. "So are you," she replied. They sat there in silence, hands still linked, the steady beeping of Lila's monitors filling the gaps where words couldn't go. Hours later, when a nurse finally came out with cautiously hopeful news, stabilized, responding, the night no longer pressing quite so hard, Malik sagged in his chair, relief knocking the breath from his lungs. He turned to Helena, eyes shining. "I don't know how to." His voice broke. He exhaled. "Thank you." "You don't owe me anything," she said. "You taught my class more in one semester than most textbooks do in a year." He blinked. "How?" "By showing up," she said simply. by forcing me to see where my theories end and real life begins, by reminding me that justice isn't an idea, it's the way we treat each other when nobody's grading us. He stared at her, awed and a little undone. In that moment, Helena felt it fully, the shift that had been happening all along. He wasn't just a student anymore. He was a mirror held up to her own life, her own choices. He was a reminder that love, real, messy, inconvenient love, wasn't something you diagrammed on a whiteboard. It was this. Sitting in an uncomfortable chair at 3 a.m., holding someone's hand while his world trembled. It was being willing to be wrong, to apologize, to show softness where you'd only ever shown steel. She stood eventually, her back protesting. "I should let you rest," she said. "Text me if anything changes. We'll reschedule your presentation when you're ready. No penalties." He rose too, stepping closer than he ever had before. He was so tall she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "Dr. Ward," he said, voice low. "Helena." Her name in his mouth stole her breath. "When I think about the people who've actually shown up for me and Lila," he continued, "you're on that list now, whether you like it or not." Her laugh came out shaky. "I think I like it," she said. He hesitated, searching her face for something she wasn't sure she knew how to give. Then he leaned in, not enough to cross any line, but enough that she could feel the warmth of him, the solid reality of his body. "Go home," he murmured. "Get some sleep. You can't keep holding the whole world to a higher standard if you burn yourself out." She wanted, fiercely and suddenly, to rest her forehead against his chest, to let his strength hold her up for once. Instead, she squeezed his hand one last time and stepped back. "Take care of her," she whispered. "Always," he said. He passed the class with one of the highest grades she'd ever given. On the last day, his final project presentation lit up the room, not with flashy slides, but with something deeper. He spoke about healthcare deserts, racial bias in medical treatment, ethical policy that actually met people where they lived. He didn't mention Layla by name, but she was in every story. "Justice," he finished, "is when we stop asking people to prove their worthiness before we decide they deserve care." The class erupted in applause. Helena's hands stung from clapping. When the semester ended, he lingered by the doorway as students filed out, diploma applications clutched in nervous hands. "So," he said lightly, fingers hooking into the strap of his backpack, "this is it." She swallowed past the ache in her throat. "This is it. Thank you," he said. 2 words, too small. His eyes said the rest. "Go change the world, Mr. Jordan," she replied, her smile wobbly but real, "and take care of your heart while you're at it." He paused, something flickering across his face. "You too," he said. "You deserve someone to take care of yours." Then he was gone. A year later, Helena walked into the campus cafe, thick thighs wrapped in dark jeans, soft cream sweater hugging her curves. She'd cut her hair shorter, let curls fall around her face. She laughed more in class now, asked more questions, assumed less. There was a flyer by the door, alumni talk. Ethics at the bedside, policy from the ground up, featuring guest speaker Malik Jordan, policy advisor, Community Health Initiative. Her heart flipped. She found him at a corner table, suit jacket draped over the back of his chair, sleeves rolled up over familiar forearms. He was talking to a group of undergrads, using his hands the way he always had, passion lighting his face. When he saw her, his smile changed. "Helena," he said, crossing the room in a few long strides. "No Dr. Ward, no distance." "Mr. Jordan," she teased, then shook her head. "I guess I should say Advisor Jordan now." He laughed, low and warm. "Just Malik is fine." They stepped outside into the cool evening, city lights flickering to life. It had rained earlier, the pavement gleamed. He held an umbrella over both their heads, tilting it instinctively more toward her. Somewhere between the hospital night and this moment, something fundamental had shifted. They were no longer lecturer and student. They were 2 adults who had seen each other at their worst and best and stayed. "You were incredible in there," she said. "Your talk, the way you connected policy to people's actual lives. You taught me that," he replied, "that ethics isn't about pretending to be neutral, it's about choosing who we stand beside." He stopped walking, turning to face her fully. The umbrella hovered above them like a small private shelter. "For the record," he added, voice softer now, "I'm still standing beside you, if you want that." Her pulse stumbled. She thought of all the days she'd hidden inside her perfectly pressed blazers, afraid to be too much, too soft, too curvy, too emotional, too anything. Of the night he'd sat in a plastic chair and held on anyway. Of the way he'd taught her that love wasn't about control or performance. It was about presence, showing up, staying, learning where you were wrong and choosing to do better. "Malik," she said, stepping closer. Her curves brushed his chest, his warmth seeping through the knit of her sweater. "You taught me what love looks like when it's not tidy, when it costs something, when it shows up at 3 a.m. with coffee and no answers." His eyes shone. "Is that a yes?" he asked quietly. She smiled, a slow, real smile that reached all the way to the parts of her that had been cold for years. "It's a start," she whispered. This time, when he reached for her hand, she met him halfway. They walked on under the shared umbrella, two silhouettes against the city lights. No longer lecturer and student, no longer judge and defendant. Just Helena and Malik, learning, step by messy, beautiful step, what love really meant.